So in 2012, crazy Uncle Joe said, Bin Laden is dead and GM is alive. And what we know 2 years later is that Al-Qaeda is still deadly, and so is GM. How would you reprioritize the focal point of the federal government, given these conflicting boundaries, which is to protect us from terror while simultaneously reviving our economy?
Yep.
Senator?
Could you repeat that one more time? I was thinking it was Bob.
I'm not going to repeat the whole thing.
Just the question part.
Just the question part is, how would you balance the priorities between protecting Americans from terror while simultaneously reviving the economy?
Wow, that's two really broad subjects. How would you protect the citizens against terrorism and still and invigorate the economy? I mean, that's definitely a balance that we have to look at. The big problem we have is, where do we put our resources? Where are we spending our money? Well, the bailouts and TARP was an unconstitutional role of government. If you go back and you look at the founding of our nation, one of the issues that our founding fathers faced in 1776 was the British government bailing out a business that they deemed too big to fail and tax the colonists to pay for it. It was the East India Tea Company, who was on the verge of bankruptcy. And they determined, well, we need to bail them out because they're too important to the economy. Well, the founders didn't take that very well. They thought that was tyranny. And so they took all the tea and they dumped it in the harbor of Boston. Most people don't realize the history of the Boston Tea Party. National security is one of the constitutional roles of government. If you look in the Constitution, it is the predominant role of our government is national security. Funding our military is the highest priority that our government has. To stimulate the economy, it's pretty simple. Less government, not more government, less government, reduce the regulation. If you look at what's going on right now in Washington, D.C., our president is legislating from the White House through policies and procedures and regulation. Congress has to withdraw that from the president. They have to control him through the budgetary process and take that power back. So I don't think that there's really a conflict if we follow conservative Republican principles by reducing regulation and prioritizing our spending on defense. I hope that was kind of getting to the context of your question. It was pretty broad, but it was a good question.
Congressman?
We often think, I think in modern times, and we see, Randy, a number of court decisions, as you know, that are far too deferential to the president as the chief executive, as the so-called commander-in-chief, to have primacy in national security. I think one thing we've learned with this administration very clearly, and even to some extent with the prior administration, Congress has to reassert its role in our national security. You know, yes, every president likes to don the hat of commander-in-chief, and that's an important role and responsibility of the president. But actually, if I know you have, read the Constitution very carefully, the responsibilities, the specific enumerated responsibilities for deciding how our military is going to be funded, the responsibilities of the military, it's vested in the Congress. The Congress needs to reassert its proper role to set those spending priorities and not let the administration constantly run roughshod over the Congress. That would help tremendously, because I think we'd see a much more, particularly in this case, where we have a commander-in-chief who has no business being the commander-in-chief, to be honest, where we have that situation. Congress does need to reassert its role. I think it's also important to keep in mind that we can and must protect our nation against terrorism without sacrificing our civil liberties here at home. That is extremely important. We don't need the NSA spying on virtually every email or every cell phone message that an American engages in. With regard to the economy, there is an awful lot that we can do that the Congress can do. I know a lot of folks like to say, well, we need a balanced budget amendment, we need an amendment for this, that, and the other thing. We don't. The tools are there. We've done it before. We balance the budget when I was a member of the House back in 1997, after being in the majority in the House for a mere 2.5 years, because we had leadership, we had vision, and we held an administration's feet to the fire over and over and over again and ensured that we brought that administration to the negotiating table and got a balanced budget. It's Congress's job. This administration won't do it. We need to do it in the Congress. I've been there. I've done it. I want to do it again.